Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. I hope everyone's having a good day. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the international news. So yesterday Iran comes out and they have made a threat saying that they can turn New York into a hellish landscape with nuclear weapons. Now, do they actually have nuclear missiles that can reach that far or not? Well, according to our administration, they do not have that yet. But we also seen where our president had went overseas and had some talks with Israel here recently, saying they would not be allowing Iran to get to a point where they have nuclear weapons. So are we a little too late on that? It's hard to say what's actually happening, but here's a little clip on that. So you can find that on a lot of different articles that are out there right now. One of the things that I think is very interesting that we need to be paying attention to is, well, several things actually. One, just recently our administration was over in the Middle East and had talks with Israel, and it came out that they were all on the same page. That we're not going to tolerate Iran becoming nuclear. But it appears that Iran is claiming that they have become nuclear now. So we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. Now, do we see anything happening on a prophetic world right now with this stuff? Well, I think so. So we know at some point in the end of days that we have Israel attack Damascus and completely obliterate it. Why would that be? Well, that's because Damascus is the central hub for Iran's nuclear projects. They say it's to basically just try to refine stuff for power. I don't believe that's what's going on. I do believe that they have a nuclear project to build missiles. They claim that they have it. I believe that they're further along than our administration would have us believe. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on that. But we could see that prophecy coming up to fulfillment where Israel could potentially attack Damascus. And not only that, guys, when we're looking at what's happening abroad, a lot of people are really focused in on what's happening to Ukraine right now, and understand. I mean, that's horrible what's happening to the families in Ukraine. But we also need to be watching at what is actually happening in due course. We're seeing these kingdoms that we're told to watch for that will come against Israel in the end days. And we're watching that these kingdoms are forming new alliances and things like that together. So we're seeing that being fulfilled. The war of Gog and Magog could happen at any moment. The stage is set, guys. So be aware of the times that we live in. Now, what does that mean for us here in America? You may be wondering, well, I'm not going to get into these timeline things. You see people get a whiteboard out and they're going to start drawing all this stuff, and it all looks great, but it doesn't answer the question: how much of this stuff are we as believers going to actually experience and see with our own eyes? Well, look at what we're seeing now. I can remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, a lot of times even 30 years ago, people would have not thought that we were going to be seeing the stuff that we're seeing now before a rapture event. But the fact is, we are here, we are seeing it. And the reason is so that we will be able to, lead others to the truth of what's going on. And that I encourage each person to do that. Now, that being said, we do have a responsibility to our families and stuff. So that's why we talk about prepping on this community. Getting food, trying to make sure that you have ways to process water, and just growing your own food as well. So a lot of the stuff I like to do on this channel is about more of a sustainable way of life, raising chickens and quail and gardens and stuff. And I recommend that people try to do that. If you're going to do gardens, if you can't afford the heritage seeds, then get what seeds you can get, guys. Your heritage seeds are going to give you a better grouping of plants, but the main thing is get something that you can grow. Even if you're trying to grow some seeds off of stuff you're buying at the supermarket, give it a try, give it a shot. It might not work for you. Some of that stuff, the processes that they're actually ripened with, artificially ripening, those seeds are not really viable. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And maybe it's something where you don't really have the time to start doing gardens now. Well, keep the seeds back. You can keep those in a cool, dry area, and you're not going to have to. I don't mean put them in a freezer, but a cool, dry area where you're not going to have to deal with humidity and excessive heat and sunlight stuff causing these things to sprout. And you can keep those for a few years. That way, when the time comes, you do have some seeds, but understand there's plants you're looking at between 2 to 3 months before maturity. That's when they start to produce fruit. So you need to be kind of aware of what's going on with that as well. Maybe it's something as simple as keeping a plant alive in your house. And a lot of people have done that. And as long as they're not getting frost on them, there are a lot of vegetable plants and even fruit plants that will continue to produce year round. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And maybe you're growing it in the corner of your room. You know, you can buy those little, they sell all kinds of different types of LED lighting that work for grow lights to have the, what is that called? The infrared spectrum and things like that. So that's something to look into, would be my recommendation to you. But the main thing is when you're seeing this news happen, and you're going to start seeing a lot more news where it seems like the entire world is just going to crap in a handbasket, don't let that worry you. We are not alone. For those of us who are believers and those who may not that are watching this channel, guys, you don't have to be alone in this type of a situation. Understand that when all of this stuff comes to a head, it is because we're approaching the end of an age, an age of where man has been tolerant of God working within the world. And right now, if we look around, and if you really search your heart for those who are unbelievers right now, what is the number one thing? People are tired of people putting their religious view in your front door, just like we're tired of people putting their sinful views in our front doors. And at some point, we will be delivered from this sinful world, and it will be handed over to those who reject the Lord. And that is a 7-year period called the tribulation. And if it's not stopped before the end of that 7 years, there will be no life left on earth. It is ran into the ground. It becomes a hellscape here on this planet. And if you will read the prophecy for yourself, guys, you're going to see how we are leading into this. And it could be one of those moments that could kick off at any moment. Now, there's a lot of scriptures that talk about a great delusion that takes hold in the end. Well, there is a great delusion that is going on even now. We're talking about a greater delusion, something that's going to explain a mass disappearance of believers at some point. And do we see anything in our media and within our science communities that would basically be able to offer a suggestion? Okay, you have believers and they're called out of this planet, they're called out of this earth. We are left, we leave from here. Where did they go? Who took them? Whatever type of situation, what happened? Do we see anything building up in a narrative where they can come in and say, okay, we figured out this is what happened? I believe that we are. There's a lot of different types of narratives out there right now, from anything from extraterrestrial to, you name it. It's just ridiculous, guys. It really is. So I think it's important that we, as believers, we lead by an example of love, the way that we're told to. It's time to put your pride away. It's time to stop walking around like we're better than everybody and explain to people that we are sinners that are saved by grace, not of our own hands. And if you want to know what that means, guys, then I recommend that you read John 3:16. You're going to understand what grace is. Despite ourselves, we can be saved, guys. But I hope everyone is having a wonderful week. Keep an eye on the horizon. Keep your eye to the hills, guys, because I believe our redemption is drawing close. Now, with that being said, it is really important that you stockpile what you can, because understand, even if you don't need those preps, all right, there's going to be people that will come across your stores or whatever you want to call it, where you're storing all your preps and stuff in some distant day where it's going to help them. It's going to be a blessing to them. So if nothing else, you should be building it up for that reason. But understand, we are not being persecuted nowhere near the way they are in the Middle East. And not only that, those in the Middle East are not being persecuted nowhere near as bad as those that will be believers during the tribulation period. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can now, to not just for our families, but for those that will follow as well. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I know this is not the typical video we do on here, but I believe it's very important people understand the time that we're living in. They understand the signs of what we're seeing, and don't be surprised to find that there becomes a major conflict. I'm talking, people are always asking, when is the next big war? Well, maybe it's already started and we're just not hearing about it. And the reason I say that is the narrative is being driven. When is the last time you actually went and looked for yourselves, other than reading somebody's report coming from a false narrative type of an angle within the media? Understand, just like ours, I'm sure right now people that live in Iran, they're being told something totally different about why things are happening the way that they're happening and what's actually happening, just like we're being told something totally different. So it's important that you understand each side's going to have their own narrative, but what you want is you want the truth. You want the truth of the matter, and that's not going to be found in man's interpretation. That's going to be found in the holy scriptures of the Bible, guys. So that needs to be where you're looking for your answers right now. Everyone have a wonderful day.